Hello, this is Kevin Kermis, and I'd like to welcome you to our Career Mastermind call today with our special guest, Ilona Vanderwoude of Career Branches. We're going to be diving in here in just a minute with Ilona, and she's going to be walking us through a number of resume-related topics since this is her area of specialty and issues. Plus, we're going to be doing a 10-second resume review, so for those of you who sent your resumes in, you will be getting the 10-second review, and your pinpoint questions as well. Many of you have emailed questions in to be tackled today, but first I want to share a little bit about Ilona and why I brought her to you today. You know, in designing this mastermind program, I've talked to dozens, and actually it's probably closer to about 50 some odd people as I think back on it, who are resume writers out there. And while there's no shortage of resume writers in the marketplace, and frankly, they're not all created equally, and you've probably seen a lot of them pop up in the past couple of years, so many fall into the category of how I would describe as simply taking your information, cleaning up the grammar, making sure the syntax is in place, and messing around with the font and the pitch. And this is exactly why I tend to understate the value of the resume and resume writers to that end in the job search process. Because this type of approach has little to do with defining you, your brand, your solution, like we talk about for those of you who've gone through my training, and differentiating you in your job search. Everything that's at the core of all the programs that I've put together. So then I met Ilona through actually another business training process and business mastermind group that the two of us were in, and it was like we were reading from the same page. She takes a holistic approach to the resume writing process and ties it in with a bigger picture. You, your brand, your solution, and when we get into this interview in a minute, you're going to hear exactly what I mean. To boot, she's a master resume writer, and this places her as one of 28 in the world with this credentialing. And not only is this an intensive certification to achieve, it requires recertification to keep the credential. She works with a proactive mid to senior level professionals looking to switch jobs or careers, and these are folks who are still employed and looking to take the next step, you know, managers, directors, C-level executives. And while she works with the resume, she also provides job search coaching, image consulting, and a myriad of other tools and processes to support this process and make it easier for our clients. So let's get to it. Ilona, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Well, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to share with us today?
Definitely. Quite a few things. First, I'd like to talk about the confusion that's out there regarding conflicting resume advice. We did receive a lot of questions about this feeling of who should I trust, who can I believe, and what is really true about all these resume rules that people are constantly citing. If nothing else, I'd like for everyone who's on the call today to basically understand the fundamentals of an effective resume. So you never have to worry again about who to trust because you can judge what they're saying against what I'm going to tell you. Next, we're going to work on your branding. Third, I'll cover different resume formats because I see a lot of confusion about that as well. Then I'll shed some light on common resume mistakes that are very easy to avoid. After that, I will address some challenges job seekers face and how to remedy them. These are also based on questions that you guys sent in. And finally, I'm going to give the 10-second reviews and wrap up with any questions you might have. But first of all, here are a few pointers I want to share right at the top of this call. These are things to keep in the back of your mind during the rest of our time here and during your job search. So grab a pen as I'll be going through these pretty quickly. Number one, a very big misconception. A resume is supposed to get you interviews and not a job. I see this a lot. Number two, there is no one magic bullet when it comes to effective resume writing, as there is no one right way to do it. So I'll be trying to simplify a pretty complex subject here today. I'll do my best. Number three, a resume is a very important tool in your job search, but you should never rely on it solely. There are many other important steps that you should be taking.
That's a tremendous amount of information to cover, no doubt. One quick admin note before we get started. For those of you who didn't get a chance to email in your questions, you can use the question function through GoToWebinar to send them in live today on the call, and both Ilona and I will tackle them.
Great. So let's talk about all this conflicting resume advice that's out there. It's something that's really frustrating for everyone involved, believe me. You need to understand that this is a non-regulated industry, the resume writing industry. Now, whether that's good or bad, it does leave us with tons of so-called resume experts who think they can tell you what you should do, but who are really lacking the qualifications and expertise to do so. You mentioned that a little earlier as well.
Right.
Then there are hiring managers or recruiters who think they know everything about resumes, but typically they only know their own preferences. And as resume writers, it's our job to know what works as a whole. So, you need to make a knowing what works as a whole and making a distinction between targeting recruiters versus targeting companies, because that's a whole different animal as well.
You raise a great point here, because it's important to know that resume advice coming from a recruiter, and I can say this from having been one, is largely driven by what's going to work for them in their process, which may or may not support your individual goals and objectives as a job seeker.
Exactly. And in the resume writing industry, we keep our ears to the ground and we network with people in the field such as companies, hiring managers, Society of Human Resources Management, recruiters, everyone. So we also conduct research to find out what works, what doesn't work, so we can be on top of trends and give our clients the most up-to-date advice. So let's look at this a little more in depth, because once you understand where all this confusion is coming from, I think you'll be able to get a much better handle on it. So here's what I see happening a lot. I see droves of people going from one resume writer to the next to have their resume reviewed and sometimes even rewritten multiple times after they receive yet another round of unfavorable feedback from, you guessed it, more resume writers. So these are job seekers that trust anyone but themselves. And then I also see people so hung up on all these rules that they'll tell me how it should be done. That's very interesting too. These are the people who bought into one particular strand of resume advice and are hanging on to it for dear life. Does this sound familiar at all?
It does to me. My question would be, how do we get so frazzled and divided, if you will, about what it takes to write an effective resume?
Well, I think the reason behind all this confusion is threefold. Number one, what makes a resume effective is something that changes over time, influenced by the job market, the economy, changes in technology and society in general. For example, during the 90s, we had the rise of email and the Internet, which have made it very easy for candidates to flood employers with resumes, who now need to sift through all of these. And often this is done by technology, and that brings a whole other challenge to the table. So today, with all this on-the-go quick communication, such as BlackBerries, iPhones, Twitter, people's attention spans are ever shortening. So this is reflected in the way they read resumes, which is really scanning resumes, as they hardly ever sit down and really read them, as you probably know too. So what was working back in the days is not working anymore, because things have become increasingly competitive.
So true.
Yeah. Number two, I mentioned this earlier too. A lot of people believe themselves to be experts. They put out their shingles and advocate away. And when they do this, they pollute the stream of information that's out there, unfortunately. And number three, job seekers fail to see the difference between what really matters in a resume and what is just personal preference of the person reviewing their resume. And something else that's important to understand is that resume writing is both an art and a science. Get a group of highly credentialed resume writers together in a room, like we do every year. We get together at conferences, and you'll still witness a lively debate about how to best list a person's sabbatical or a candidate's education, or whether to use Arial or Tahoma as the font. But there are several things that these top-notch resume writers agree on, and these are the fundamentals, and this is what I call the resume must-haves.
So would you say there are really hardcore rules that should be followed to be successful?
Yes, there are. One disclaimer here: because of personal opinion, you will never be able to please everyone with your resume. I've also heard some really weird comments from hiring managers, but as a whole, we know what you must do with your resume to make it effective. Also, I want to make it clear that it takes more than following the 3 must-haves that are coming up to create a highly effective resume. However, these 3 things form the foundation and will at least get you past the 10-second resume scan, which is really the biggest part of the battle. So before I go over my 3 must-haves, it's important to shift your thinking a bit. You know, people are always talking about resume rules as if there is some resume writing god out there doling out these rules that no one can really get a handle on. And in reality, the factors that form the basis of an effective resume are invariably based on common sense. And this is why I've been preaching the common sense approach for years. So just put yourself in the shoes of a hiring person or a recruiter for a second. They see resumes all day long, stacks and stacks of them. So time is money. Are they going to sit and read your 5-page essay-style resume? No way. Will they take a few minutes and piece together how your really interesting and diverse background might fit with their organization or their clients? You know, again, no chance. So will they spend about 10 seconds to see what jumps out at them? Very specifically, who you are, what you do, where your expertise lies, and what you can do for them? You got it.
Now, do you have some must-haves for resumes to get past that initial screening?
I do. So here are my 3 hardcore resume must-haves that will get you past that first screening. Number 1, your resume needs to have a clear focus. And I'm not talking about the old objective, but it's along the same lines. Just focus more on the employer and what you can do for them versus what you want from them. You know, objectives typically read something like this: challenging position where I can use my skills and experience and have room for growth. So, you know, these are meaningless statements and could apply to anyone from a janitor to a CFO. And just the word objective, you know, it says that, it implies that it's about you. It's your objective, what you want. So we want to create a clear focus to make it instantly clear who you are and what you do, or what you want to do if you're switching careers. So how can you do this? If you're staying in the same field, simply bold your title or a variation thereof at the top of your resume, such as Global Marketing Specialist, Senior Finance Director, Executive Assistant, Healthcare Administrator, or you could make it a little longer by adding something such as Global Marketing Specialist with 15 years experience in consumer industries. Alternatively, you could just use a title, and underneath you can specify your area of expertise by adding just a few more words. It could be about the industries you specialize in, or maybe some functional areas of expertise that you want to highlight to round out this notion of who you are. For example, Global Marketing Specialist is your title, and underneath you have product development, branding strategies, strategic and tactical planning. Another example would be Healthcare Executive, underneath program development, budget control, leadership and staff development. So if you are changing careers, however, you can simply precede this title with the word focus, : It's very simple. So, you know, you don't want to be misleading, because if you're not currently a sales professional and you want to switch into sales and you call yourself a sales professional, that could be perceived as misleading. So you precede it by focus or key value, : you know, really simple solutions that can make a big difference. The example that's up right now was one that I mentioned before. You see there at the top, Healthcare Executive, very clear, you know, who this guy is. It's a healthcare executive. And underneath it specifies his areas of expertise: program development, budget control, leadership and staff development. Okay, back to the overview. If you want to pursue different types of positions in different industries, simply tweak your resume so you have multiple versions. And this is very important too. I get a lot of questions about this. People think it's too much work, or they're not sure if you really should be doing this or if it's ethical. And yes, it's totally okay and normal and fine to do this. In fact, you're highly recommended to do this. So the top third of your resume is where you want to do that, especially the title and the focus, of course. Again, getting back to the focusing of your resume. So just remember that an unfocused resume is an ineffective resume. And this may feel very counterintuitive to you if you're not sure what you want to do or if you want to keep your options open, but believe me, this is vital. And I can attest to this from my recruiting perspective as well, and I'm sure Kevin can too. And we also hear this complaint a lot from hiring people in the field. If I get a client, a resume writing client, who tries to persuade me to write a generic resume, I'll educate that person until I see blue in the face if I must. It's that important. So on to number 2 of the must-have resume rules. Your resume needs to be branded.
Now branding, I just want to jump in here real quick. Branding, and particularly personal branding, and I've heard different variations of this, have become quite the buzzwords and phrases in the job search arena as of late. Can you explain what you mean in terms of branding?
Yes, definitely. When your resume is branded, it clarifies why you should be hired over anyone else in the same position with the same type of responsibilities and similar achievements. So a personal brand is really a differentiated promise of value. It's about what's unique about you that has a bottom line impact. Often it's also about how you get results. Employers like to know how you do something differently. And it's very important to realize that a personal brand is organic and authentic. You don't just pull it out of thin air or make something up, or borrow your colleague's brand. It's really about who you are and your core skill set, and then distilled into the one overriding factor that will make you irresistible to employers. It's also something that you would absolutely love doing. Most frequently, you love doing what you're good at. Those two go hand in hand. If you could be good at something you don't like, in that case, don't do that.
Right.
The challenge is, you see that happening. People use the same skills over and over that they've been pigeonholed in, and then they complain they can't get out of it, and that's why. The challenge is in identifying and leveraging your brand so people can see it even more clearly. So how can you do this? It's not easy to figure out your personal brand by yourself, as you're basically too close to the source. Some people take weeks or even months to do this, even with the help of a professional, but I think it doesn't have to be so complicated. And over time, I figured out a way to do this with my own clients that seems to work really well. So you can get started by asking yourself and others around you what it is you consistently do really well, that you love doing, and that is of value to an employer. This could be several things. It could be work task related, or it could be more of a personality thing, or both. You also want to keep your target position, company, and culture in mind. Some places and positions put a heavier emphasis on personality traits and others on functional skills. So once you find your brand, though, you hold on to it. This is really pivotal data that you want to turn into a branding statement of 1 to 2 sentences maximum. And this goes at the top 1/3 of your resume. You can also create a sort of tagline out of it by combining your branding statement with your focus. And this is something I would like everyone who's on the call today to remember. Companies will interview you for the money or the bottom line part of your brand, but they will hire you for the chemistry part. However, without the money part, you don't get through the door. Let's see if we have, here, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I'm dealing with a leftover cold that's been lingering for 3 weeks. Yeah. Really annoying. Excuse me. So what we're looking at now on the screen, if you look at the webinar, this is an example of a person that has a very clear brand. This is a sales professional, and his brand is right there on the left side, the 80% converter. His brand statement is right next to that on the right, also in bolded. It says, combining precision targeting, in-depth needs analysis, and expert product knowledge to consistently convert 80% of prospects, increase margins, and exceed quota. This guy was really, really consistent in this, and this was what he was known for. So this is a very clear example of the brand and the brand statement. Excuse me. So on to rule number 3 that must be part of your resume, and that is showing proof of your statements. In other words, backing up your brand and brand statement. And I just want to add another quick word here about what I see happening a lot. near the top of the resume, you see a lot of summaries. That's great. They should be there. But recently, they've kind of lost their meaning. And I used to write these myself for my clients. It would include things such as results-oriented marketing director with great people skills and negotiation abilities. And it would just go on and on like that. Statements like these were hot several years ago, but you'll be toast if that's what you're relying on today. No pun intended. Why? This is because they're overused and because everyone can make these claims. You know, hiring people don't even bother to read them anymore because they know it just doesn't mean anything. You know, it's not backed up. What you want to do is include specifics. So it's okay to throw some adjectives and skills in there as long as you back them up. You know, provide context, provide specifics. So how can you show proof of your statements? In your resume's top section, create a summary of a few lines max, don't go overboard, and weave in either quantifiable achievements or mention one or two representative successes that show some context. This part is often called the summary or profile. It really doesn't matter what you call it, and you don't even have to label it on your resume. People will understand what it's about. You know, your resume really shouldn't read like anyone else's, and that's another downside of copying your colleague's resume or using a template. Don't do that. So the next example we're looking at the webinar is just another branding example. This guy's brand is From Science to Profits, and we're using it, both his brand and his branding statement, which is a little further down where you see it's basically the second sentence that's bolded. It says, turn nanotechnology into products, markets, and profits while positioning company for sustained profits. So this guy was really someone who was involved in the entire process from product development all the way through business development. And it also says it right under From Science to Profits. You see leading edge technology, product, and business development professional. So when someone is scanning this resume real quickly, it's very easy to see who this is, what he does, and what he is about, and what sets him apart. And that's the goal here. So getting back to number 3, throughout your resume, you want to make sure that you quantify your achievements. This is not just something that needs to happen at the top third of your resume. You want to provide context, and basically what you want to do is compare your accomplishments to industry or company averages or to the achievements of your peers or your predecessor. So those were my 3 must-have resume rules. Again, let's recap. Number 1, having a clear focus for your resume. Number 2, making sure your resume is branded. And number 3, supporting your brand and focus with proof of your statements. And I'd like to add a quick bonus tip, number 4. Make sure that everything that's on your resume is relevant to your focus or target. This will help keep your whole resume focused. And guess what? These are also my top 3 tips to ensure that you'll end up on the yes pile in this lousy economy, or any economy for that matter.
You know, this is exactly why I wanted to do this call with you, because this tailor fits into what I teach clients throughout, you know, my download boot camps and other training. Can you dig into the branding process some more for us?
Absolutely. So let's move on to our second topic on our list and explore the branding process. As we just discussed, a brand is a promise of value that you deliver consistently. In short, here's what your action steps are in uncovering and incorporating your personal brand into your resume. 1, discover the personal brand. 2, build the resume brand statement. 3, identify a cluster of accomplishments that exemplify that brand and value. And 4, strategize the resume content around the brand. So let's do a little exercise together. Grab a pen and paper and write down what comes to mind in response to the following questions. And this is a pretty long list, so don't worry if you don't get it all, because some of the questions are somewhat repetitive, but you get the overall idea. What are you known for? What are you the go-to person for? If you had a byline underneath your name on your office door, what would it say? What do you stand for, no matter what? If you had to describe yourself professionally in one sentence, what would you say? What are you doing when you are loving what you do and are at your best? People in your field have similar skills. What do you do with those skills that is different? Is it the way you do something? Is it your ability to make things happen, make things clear, or motivate people to perform? What is the emotional appeal that you bring to the market? How do people feel around you? What is your reputation with peers, staff, vendors, clients, and others? Now, I know these are a lot of questions, but it just gives an idea of the type of information to search for. And when you answer these questions, it's important to keep two things in mind. One, you have to love what you do. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're great at something but you don't love it, don't use it, because if you use that for your branding, you'll end up doing more of the stuff you hate doing. There's no point. Number two, your target industry and position is something you want to keep in mind as well. Your brand can have different aspects because you have different aspects as a person. So the secret is to keep it focused. It has to connect with your target audience, which is the companies you're trying to get hired by. So when you go back to your resume, you want to distill a branding statement from your brand. And this is what we just looked at with the samples. Sometimes the difference between someone's brand and their branding statement is negligible. And, you know, it's important not to get hung up on this. It's just what I want to do, excuse me, what I want to do is point out to you that there are different ways that this can be done. It will immediately help employers see what differentiates you and what you bring to the table. So the next example that's up there is Patrick Kelly. He is a communications and training specialist, and basically his brand and brand statement are one and the same. Right underneath his title it says, raising the bar for performance, productivity, and profits. And this is actually also a career change resume, but let's not go there because we'll get sidetracked. I could tell a lot about this resume, but I don't want to distract from the original points. Just another example of how you can be creative with the brand and the brand statement. And these are not the things to get hung up on. Just like I said, you know, it's important that you distill what your brand is and be able to verbalize it and use it throughout your resume and your cover letter. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
So the next step is to incorporate your brand throughout your resume. With each accomplishment that you'll be listing, you're going to ask yourself, does this support my brand and my target? If so, you'll include it, and if not, don't. This will ensure congruency throughout your document and will help pull out those aspects of your career that are most relevant for hiring people. So branding is clearly what sets you apart. Someone had asked how you can differentiate yourself when everyone is receiving the same advice from a resume expert. And again, branding is the answer. You may have the same title, you may work in the same field, you may have similar responsibilities, and even your achievements are kind of along the same lines, but no one has your style and unique combination of skills, talents, and way of doing things, leave alone your personality. So that answers that question. Now, for the third topic, different resume formats. Basically, there are three formats. One, we have reverse chronological. This is a very standard approach that you'll see a lot. Your current job is listed first, working your way back in time from there. This resume format includes all dates and provides details for each position that is listed on the resume. It's a format that is favored among hiring folks and recruiters, especially recruiters. And we have a resume up there, Anthony James, healthcare executive is his title. It's the same one we showed earlier, and the reason I'm showing it again is because it's a very clear example of a chronological resume. As you saw, there was just a summary there, and it goes straight into professional experience. Kevin, could you scroll back up a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, professional experience. sometimes I call it something else. And this is actually a resume I wrote about 6 years ago, so it's not representative of per se of what the latest and greatest is right now. This one is not branded, but it's just an example of chronological resume, very, very straightforward. And it will become clear why I'm showing such an outdated resume in a minute. So the next format is functional. It's dubbed the dysfunctional resume format by a colleague of mine, and that's for a reason, because it's hated by recruiters and hiring people alike because they know you're trying to hide something.
I can
Functional
attest to
resume,
that.
yeah, really, something is up, right, when you see that. A functional resume leaves all dates off and doesn't tie achievements to specific companies. So you want to use this only when writing it in reverse chronological order would put you out of the running even faster than with a functional format. And this is really your last resort method. Let's say if you've been incarcerated again and again in between every other job, and it's just one big mess and you can't make anything of it. I shouldn't laugh because maybe someone's on the call who has that background, but certainly hope not. Anyway, we're looking at an example right now, Patrick Finley, and could you scroll all the way to the top? Okay, so we start with a profile. It goes into experience, but really, when you look there, these are functional sections, management. When you scroll down, I'll see what the next, operations and logistics, and I think there's another one underneath. So basically, and all the way in the end here is training and development. And what I've done some dates on this one, Kevin, if you scroll down further, you guys will see it. I included some years basically here, June 1990 until June 2001 on the United States Marine Corps. So this is, there's a work history. There's nothing tied into the work history as far as achievements go. And another little interesting detail, this is my very, very first resume that I wrote professionally 8 years ago. And although I would never write it this way today, it was very effective back then for this person. This was someone who was transitioning from the military to the civilian workforce. But it's a very clear example of a functional resume. And the reason I'm showing such outdated resumes, both the other one and this one, is that rules were different then, and this is how you can see it. Like the preferred resume format is the hybrid, which I will cover next. So these type of resumes are hardly ever right. You will hardly see a functional resume coming out of my office. So that is that. The hybrid resume, like I said, it's the preferred format these days. It's still in reverse chronological order, but it adds some functional areas up front for extra emphasis on specific skill groups. It's great for career changers as well. So it's basically marrying the two different chronological and functional formats and using the best of both. And again, here's Patrick Kelly. And if we scroll down a little bit, you see how after the summary up front, and there's a key areas of strength section that's something for another conversation. You can throw it in or you can leave it off. But if we scroll down a little bit, here we go. Core expertise and achievements. You see those three sections: executive training, negotiation, sales, and persuasive speaking training, public speaking, workshop, seminars. And then underneath, we get related experience with the dates, with the places, with I'm sorry, everything that took place. So it's really a chronological story from related experience on down. And like I said, this was a career change resume, a very, very challenging one at that. Probably the most challenging one I ever did. So that's why I use related experience. I normally wouldn't do that probably. Anyway, my point is you saw those sections up there, the functional sections that you also saw in the functional resume before, and then it goes into a chronological overview. So people can still see what you did, where you did it, and when you did it, but there is an emphasis on specific skills up front. So sorry, just need to take a sip of water here.
No, absolutely.
Okay, so back to the resume formats. There's another type of resume format that I'd like to tell you guys about, and it's one that you don't see a lot. I call it the networking resume. It's a one-page document that contains part of your resume, but it has sections that you would never see on an actual resume. We're seeing that now up on the screen, David P. Johnson, and it's pretty self-explanatory. What you see there is the senior sales professional. This part is basically taken from that person's resume. It's that summary, but shortened. Successes, there you pick your most representative successes or achievements. On the right, target positions. It lets the person know what you're looking for. It's really a flexible career marketing tool that enables you to research, reflect on, and streamline relevant targets. And it helps you search for decision makers within these targets. You know, a normal resume doesn't go into depth as far as the companies you're looking for, the geography, under target industries, target contacts. These are the people you'd want to have an interview with, target company and position profile that talks more about the culture, and then corporate history. You simply list your employer names real briefly. Target companies here is open, but clearly if there are specific companies that you love to work for, you put them there. And geography, you can indicate where you'd want to work. So, you know, it's, I'm sorry. You know, it serves as a really great piece of marketing collateral during informational interviews and even networking meetings, because the networking resume really crystallizes your search goals, that it makes it very easy for your networking contacts to follow up with specific and valuable advice. Normally you send your resume and people don't really know what to do with it, you know, maybe forward it to someone, but this is a document that still gives them an overview of who you are, what you're about, and really what you're looking for. And a lot of times what happens is people get feedback. Like someone will say, oh, you know what, I see you're looking for XYZ company, but you know what, I just heard that they're doing this and that. This might not be the best option for you, but I think you should check out that company. Or someone actually has specific introductions or contacts. So it's very powerful to move your networking forward, and with that your search really to move it forward. People really love this.
You know, Ilona, this is so important for everybody to keep top of mind at all times. You know, succinctly and directly getting across your message, you know, what you're going to do for that future employer. Like you were talking about before, you know, it's not about you, it's about what you're going to do for them. And I always talk about this in terms of ROI or return on investment, you know,
right,
because they're making an investment in you by hiring you. So the quicker you can outline that, the quicker you find yourself getting a job in the simplest terms, right?
Exactly. So on to the third topic, common resume mistakes that are really easy to avoid. Remember also that you want to make sure your resume doesn't make it easy for someone to eliminate you, because very often that's how it goes. They're looking for reasons to make the yes pile smaller, so they need reasons to put more resumes on the no pile. Again, they're inundated, and this is just how it works. So here are some concrete tips everyone on the call can implement today. Number one, typos. You've heard it before, but it's very true. It can have you eliminated quickly. They're seen as a representation of your lack of thoroughness. So proof your resume and have someone else do it for you as well. Number two, unprofessional presentation and email addresses. Never use your employer's email address either. It's unprofessional, people. It leaves people to wonder what else you do on company time with company resources and what you'll do on theirs once they hire you. And for your own sake, you never know what your employer is tracking. Company email is not private. So if you don't want them to know you're searching, don't give them clues. And then there are these email addresses like hotkisses@yahoo.com. This will take you out of the running faster than you can imagine, and this happens a lot. You will be surprised. I'm sure you've seen them too.
Absolutely.
Get an email account with your name. What's that?
I say absolutely. That in voice. I know this is getting off on a tangent, but that in voicemail messages that make you feel like you need to take a shower after you've listened to them. There.
Exactly, or very unprofessional voice message, or the
Exactly.
kid recording the voice message. You need to have a dedicated phone number, or just if you give your home phone number, the people in your household need to be instructed on how to answer that phone during your job search.
Absolutely.
So, and as far as email accounts go, get one with your name as simple and straightforward and clear as possible, and use it for job searching only. It's so easy to avoid this one. It's such a shame when I see people make this mistake. They get thrown out just like that. Another common mistake is copy that is hard to read because the font is too small. And I know you guys do that because you're trying to keep it to one page, but that's no longer necessary either. Two-page resumes are fine. Unless you're fresh out of college with very little experience, but really this is one of those rules that got a life of its own, the one-page resume rule. And it's another example of how applying the common sense approach will save the day. Also, make sure to include enough white space. You know, your resume simply needs to be easy on the eyes. Another mistake, number 4, including personal data such as marital status, date of birth, religion, and even including a photo. And we got a question about this too. Companies are not allowed to make decisions based on these factors. So very often they will toss resumes with this type of data just to avoid any possible legal issues down the road. And I know a lot of this type of information is standard in other countries around the world. In America, we're very particular about it. Just do not include it. On to number 5. This is a whole other issue. Irrelevant and inappropriate info, such as one cream pie eating contest. I'm almost afraid to say it. It sounds so weird, but I've seen it. This is a real-life example, and I have many more. It's just not, a resume is just not the place for it, ever. Which, number 6, mistake number 6 talks about that as well. Hobbies, they should in general not be included. Hobbies that can be included are those that are relevant to your target, like team sports or sports that show endurance. That could make sense, but be careful to include high-risk sports. Another thing is if you had a scholarship, like an athletic scholarship, that might be worthwhile mentioning because it's a very special achievement. Or if you do something that's really different, other than eating cream pies,
Right.
but if you do something that really stands out, that's kind of like an icebreaker.
There's different and then there's
that
different.
could work. Exactly, yeah. Just really keep your target audience in mind, because in the end, a resume is a marketing piece. On to number 7 of common resume mistakes, dating yourself. And I'm not talking about taking yourself to the movies here. What I mean is, don't go all the way back to the 60s and 70s. You know, employers want to see the last 15 years or so of your background, because what you've done most recently is most relevant. Unless you are C-level executives, then people want to see where you came from. They want to see the whole background and the whole development. But, you know, not everyone agrees on this 15-year cutoff, but clearly everyone's situation is different. The bottom line is you really don't need to go back that far. Number 8 of common resume mistakes. Another one, including references on your resume. Leave alone bad references. You know, and don't laugh because I've seen it happen. You shouldn't even mention references available on request. We know they are, and if they're not, you're in big trouble. Your resume should be focused, succinct, and on target, and everything that's not necessary is just cluttering your focused message. It's just using valuable space, and it shouldn't be there.
Well, Ilona, thanks. I mean, this has been tremendous insight into the resume, and sometimes it's all about, like you said at the beginning, adjusting your viewpoint in order to be able to achieve those goals and objectives. Now, you've covered must-have factors on your resume and different resume formats and common mistakes. Do you think is now a good time to do the 10-second reviews for the resumes that were sent in?
Sure.
Okay, great. Let me give me a second here to pull these up. we'll pull up the first one. We have 3 to walk through here. I don't know why there's a delay between me pulling them up and them showing up on the screen, but okay, there we go. And just let me know if you want me to scroll through this at all to point anything out.
Okay. So is everyone seeing the exact same thing I'm seeing too?
Yes, yes.
Okay, then I'll look at it at the same screen. Okay, so let me just go over this for a little bit. Would you scroll down slowly so we can see the whole thing? Basically, I just want to see the end of the resume, like where is this going? Okay, that's it. I see it. Okay, great. Let's go back to the top.
Okay.
I think by now I've looked at it for more than 10 seconds.
Probably.
So yeah, the first thing that I noticed is the objective, right? We talked about this earlier. There we go. To a certain senior level software sales position that would allow for upward mobility. Again, it's something that was hot in the 80s, but you know, it's about the person, and it's not about really. It doesn't tell me anything about what they bring to the table. The only thing it does include, and I have to give the person this because not every objective includes this, but it includes senior level software sales position. So there is a clue. It's there, but it's in very tiny print, very tiny font. Then it goes straight into work experience. So, you know, I'm here lost trying to read all these bullet points. I mean, it's quickly looking at this, I see a bunch of information that doesn't tell me much. There's no summary. There's nothing that literally summarizes for me what this person is about and what they can do for me. There are a lot of bullets there that do not make it easy to read. I would really have to start reading, and this is the whole thing. Basically, they lost me at hello.
Right.
And simply because there's nothing that jumps out, nothing that when I go through it quickly, that jumps out and is clear. Like I actually have to start reading it. And you know what? Before we move on with these resume reviews, I want to make something very clear because I have seen the worst resumes belonging to people with great qualifications. So if this is your resume we're critiquing, please, for everyone, keep in mind we're only critiquing the resume and absolutely never the person behind it.
Well, you and I talked about that a little bit before the call, and the comment that I made was, as you were asking about the resume and how we used it in the search firms I owned, and I will tell you flat out,
right.
as a headhunter, we would rejoice when there was a terrible resume that came in from a great candidate. And that's simply because we knew we have a diamond in the rough. And in the rough because your resume is not representing who you are. You're fantastic. So you're out there marketing yourself through your resume, and I know you're not creating any competition for me. And that may sound brutal, folks, but that's, in upcoming mastermind series, we will do a call where I'll get headhunters on here, and you'll hear exactly how it works. And that's why I said at the beginning, sometimes it aligns with your goals, and sometimes they don't. And in this case, they don't, because they're not going to tell you. They're going to tell you what to do with your resume in order to help them get you the job, not to help with your overall job search. Because if you have a lousy resume, that works to their advantage.
Right, right. But for everyone listening, I hope they hear that this is to your advantage as a recruiter and definitely not to theirs.
Exactly.
Because when you also shared with me that you specialize in salespeople, and you actually call these people to assess their sales skills. Not every recruiter does that. You know, there are people that this resume that works for you would definitely not work for them, and they're just falling through the cracks. And that's what's so sad, because there really are great people with great qualifications, and they're not being picked up simply because of how they're presenting themselves on their resumes. Do you have another resume you'd like us to review?
Let me pull up the next one.
Okay.
It should be up here in a second. Okay, there we go.
Okay. would you just scroll down again just so we have an overview of the entire resume before I launch my harsh
I will.
critic? I'm kind of joking. I don't mean to be.
No, well, I mean that's
Harsh,
what this is all about, to give objective feedback on what people are seeing.
Exactly. My whole goal is for people to understand what it is and how much of a difference it can make if you implement certain changes. And I also wanted to mention, I'm not implying here that writing a stellar resume is easy. Just follow these 1, 2, 3 steps and you've got it nailed. I mean, it is hard to write your own resume, and there are just certain things that can really help. And I think if you incorporate the tips I give you today, you'll be ahead of the pack. A lot of people, I see these resumes a lot. The one that we're looking at right now, it's very easy to set yourself apart from these types of resumes. So here we go. Objective, again, to obtain a leadership role within an aggressive, result-oriented organization. Okay, so, and then it goes into qualifications, work history. Again, the objective, need I say more? And this one is as bland and generic as can be. I don't know anything about you right now. A leadership role could be, are you working for McDonald's? Are you working, corporate America? Are you working, on Wall Street? Are you working in a zoo? I mean, leadership could be anything. Result-oriented organization could be anything too. Qualification. So this person did insert a summary, which is great. A lot of people don't even have that. However, this is the type of summary I was talking about earlier with all these adjectives and skills that don't really mean anything. I'm just very quickly going through. Ability to work in a diverse environment, superior problem-solving skills, goal-oriented, strong customer relation skills. There's no context. This could be anyone. Anyone can just throw it in there. Today, hiring people are not even going to look at this. And I'm glancing over. I'm just commenting on it right now and actually picking a few things out. But going down to the work history, oh my God, this is so hard to read. It's just, the other one was just bullets. This one is just paragraph-style text, and that's very hard to read too. It's too much. The font is too small. It's basically the same thing as the other resume where, oh my God, the paragraphs are getting longer. Wow, you would really, really have to sit down and read this to make sense of this. This is, again, nothing is jumping out. So as far as any clues to who this person is, I see here regional director, and that is as vague as it can be too. Underneath, district manager. So clearly your title is what it is, but it's up to you to make it clear up front at the top of your resume exactly who you are, what you do, what your brand is, what makes you different, and what your bottom line value is, and what your areas of expertise are.
Now I have to point out an irony on here, and again, I'm not beating up on anyone because I had this conversation with the person who sent this resume in. But the irony here is they're coming out of a background in the staffing and search industry. So again,
wow.
And I'm not trying to take shots at recruiters, but I can tell you this, and any of those of you on here who've been on previous calls of mine, I've talked about in the past that one of the search firms that I owned in the past placed other headhunters, a very wacky niche, but the bottom line was people who are in the search business, there are two things that they think they do exceptionally well, but typically don't do very well at all, and that is interview and write resumes. And that may seem odd, but it's very different. It's kind of like the coach and the player. They're, those who teach can't, and those who, can't teach sometimes do. It's very hard to find somebody who can teach and do. And there are people out there like that who do. I'd like to think that I'm one of them, but the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of folks out there who don't do that very well. So again, consider carefully where you're getting your advice from. I think we have
Exactly.
one
And I've
more.
seen the same thing also from HR people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they're looking at it from the perspective of what they know that they like, and what works for them and maybe their process,
Right.
which isn't necessarily what's going to support you in your search. Okay, we've got the
Exactly.
third resume up here.
Okay. Well, could you scroll down once
We'll do
again
that.
just so we have an overview?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think I see a theme with these also. I think the other one was 2 pages, right? Or is this is 1 page?
The other one I think was just one, or just a little over one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see this theme of very small font, people trying to fit it onto 1 page, and here again, it's a lot of information that's hard to read. There's tons and tons of bullets, and typically what you would want to do is with each job, you want to have maybe 2, 3 lines of a description of your responsibilities. It's really the context, if you want. What kind of organization are you part of? Like, how many people do you supervise? What kind of budget are you managing? Really the basic stuff. Those are not accomplishments. The bullets, and you don't want to go over 5 per position. You want to use for achievements. So that will take care of that. And use space. People use some white space. The other thing with this resume, clearly, it leads off with education. There is no title, no focus, nothing. I have no clue. For me to figure out who this person is, I go straight to, okay, Marketing and Retention Manager, USA Today, National Sales. So now I'm pigeonholing this person into that industry and role. I'm thinking this is who he is, this apparently is who he wants to be, he or she. The education up front, there are situations where you want to pull up your education section. However, it should never be the first thing. You really should have your title or your focus, your branding statement, a little summary up front, and you could weave that education in there. Or you could simply mention your recently acquired MBA in your summary. But I'm looking here at the date also. This has been 4 years ago, over 4 years ago since this person obtained their MBA. At that point, it's not so hot anymore, and it should go back to the bottom. And I would mention it up front. I typically mention great education in the summary. So this really has no place being here, this education section. Again, it's not a strategic document. It's hard to read. It doesn't tell me really who I'm dealing with, other than I'm just looking at the past job titles. This person is not positioning themselves for anything in particular. And this could very well be, again, a great person with a great track record and credentials, but if I have people who make themselves clear on paper, I'm picking them. And if that fits what I'm looking for. I used to do some recruiting last year, and it is definitely true what all these hiring people are telling us, that the lack of focus is just, it's a pain because you cannot ascertain who the person is and what they bring to the table.
That's very true. Well, hey, this has been some great stuff, and these are great examples of, sometimes, for lack of a better way to put it, not being able to see the forest for the trees, and prime examples of perception being reality. Because at the end of the day, and I'd say this constantly, regardless of what anyone might think about their own resume, you're the one person who's never going to hire you. So in essence,
yeah, exactly.
as you're looking at it, and this is, this is why when I put together projects and things like both my boot camp and the mastermind series, I take it out to people like Ilona and other individuals who are in the same industry and say, what do you think about this? Because I'm the one person who's never going to go, never going to go through my training. The process is the same thing with the with the resume. And this is probably a good place as any to
Right.
mention that Ilona and I are planning, we're actually in the final stages of putting together a comprehensive webinar series on working through all these steps that she's covered today. And I'm not going to get into that today because we need to get to the questions, but I'm going to be sharing in a few weeks about this. And not only will I make certain that everybody in the Mastermind series hears about it first, but I'll be extending a special discount for you all and kind of first right of refusal. So be on the lookout for that. Now I know we
first
have
right
some
of acceptance.
right. First right of acceptance. Not refusal. Let's be positive, right? So,
Right.
we've gotten a bunch of questions sent in. I do want to send the ones that people are on the line now, and I'm going to walk through those. So, the first question is, and I think we've kind of covered this effectively, but if you can give a quick recap, what should be in the profile summary section, and truly what is its purpose?
The profile summary section. The purpose is to give a snapshot of you, who you are, and it is basically a resume within a resume, is what I call it. You know, it's the top third of your resume that is most important. It's prime resume real estate, as I say,
Right.
and it's where people focus most. So if the rest of your resume got lost, that top section, you know, the profile, the summary, whatever you want to call it, that should be able to sell you, and it should be able to clarify to anyone reading it really who you are, what you bring to the table, and either your most representative successes or your brand statement. So it's clear. It's clarity and it's uniqueness. That's what it's for, really.
Okay. Now, do you recommend, here's another question, do you recommend a resume format that would make the resume more readable on a BlackBerry or iPhone? Many people read PDF attachments on their phones now. Do you take that into account when you're putting together the resume?
Yes. Typically, well, when I prepare resumes for my clients, I give them all formats. I give them Word, PDF, and text version. And I guess this also applies to when you apply online, when you apply on these on companies' websites where they have specific software and programs that let you update your resume. And these have been in development a lot. And the main thing is you want to, when there are instructions, you want to follow them. But as far as making it readable on device and email, even for regular email, you want to use a text version. If there are capabilities, you typically will hear about it. But the best thing is always just ask. Ask how the person wants to receive it, if it's not already made clear. And this is not always possible. In that case, I would typically use it as a text, text-only ASCII, so all the formatting is removed so it doesn't mess up the whole layout, and attach an actual made-up document, like a formatted document, I should say.
Okay.
Kind of cover your bases. But most of the time, people are pretty clear on how they want to receive it. And if not, ask.
The next question is, I took 2 years off from work voluntarily to pursue other interests. How do I address this on the resume?
Do we know what the interests were?
No. I mean, it sounds to me like it's, that in my mind qualifies as one of those where you really kind of have to dig into the weeds.
Okay.
What I was going to say, my 2 cents worth about it is that you're looking at those relatable skills, because it depends less that you've taken a step out of your field than where you're moving back into. Are you moving back into your field? Are you looking at transitioning to a new field and taking those skills and what you've gained in the last 2 years and applying them and articulating that on the resume?
Definitely, exactly. And there's another really easy way to fix this. Just list it on the resume and include the dates. When hiring folks scan your resume, they scan for gaps. So just having something there with the dates, just as if it were a job, will patch the gap. So here's how you do it. Of course you can't write nonsense, but if you took courses or you volunteered or you went back to school, you can mention this and look at where you're going, as Kevin just said, and distill those skills that you learned or obtained or things you learned and use those. Be relevant and be selective. But sometimes you need to translate what you did back then to business verbiage. You could have taken a sabbatical or you could have cared for elderly parents or whatever. But it's important to have it on there. And how I do it is you just use one or two sentences, or lines rather, I'm sorry, and you give yourself a title. For example, if you went back to school, I give a person like that the title full-time student, and the employer, quote unquote, is now the university that they went to, and I fill in the dates because like you look at the dates and see if there are any gaps, and this is the biggest thing. Just have something there, and you can always elaborate on it in an interview, but just include one sentence maybe with what you did, what you learned. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to explain everything, but very often people obtain skills or have learned things that are really relevant, and you can use it. You can use it right there. But the most important thing is patch that gap and treat it as if it was a job, even if you only take a one or two lines on the resume for it. But have dates there.
Okay. The next question is, I'm changing careers after 20 years, have little experience but lots of education in the new field. How can I make the transition in the resume?
Well, here's how you do that. You want to use a hybrid format. So up front you have, as always, you have your brand, your title, which will be preceded by something like focus, colon. You have your summary, but then have these functional sections. And what you do is you incorporate things that you learned, things from your education that are relevant to your new career, and list them there. So you could also, if you just graduated, getting back to what I was saying earlier about the education section in the other resume review, is if you just graduated with a great relevant degree, you want to pull that up front, but never right at the top. You have your summary, do it underneath. But this is a situation where you would really want to focus heavily on that education and on the skills obtained there and pull them up to the front. This is not a situation where you'd want to just start listing your experience and then all the way at the bottom is your education, because right now this is the most marketable thing, most likely. I mean, experience even in different areas could still be supportive because, there's most likely going to be something transferable, but, let's say there's really not. You want to rely heavily on your education and pull that up front.
Okay. Is there a font
So basically,
size?
once again, using these. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I just wanted to clarify again that. Yeah, we'll be talking through each other. So creating those functional areas, you can have 2 or 3, give them a heading, and figure out what the most relevant things are that you learned that you can use for your next career that are of relevance to your audience that will make them sit up and be interested and want to speak with you.
Is there a font size that you recommend?
Well, this really depends on the font that you're using. But I typically don't go below 11. Let's see. Yeah, I play around with different fonts, but I think Arial 11 would be it. I'm not really crazy about Times New Roman, but it's really, the litmus test is it easy for you to read? Hand it to someone else, is it easy to read? So you don't want to play the game of making the font so small to make it all fit on the page and cram more in. At that point, it should be about editing down your resume and really, sometimes it's like killing your darlings, as they say in writing. You want to be relevant and on target. A resume is not a job application, so it doesn't have to include everything. So I think font size is not so much the real issue here as it is trying to fit everything into your resume, and that's really a matter of relevance and writing sharply. So you can also, in resume writing, what we do is We leave out personal pronouns. We don't use I and me and mine. A lot of articles, we don't say the or a, only if it really makes a sentence awkward if you leave it out. But those are things you can omit, and the resume will flow still, and that will save you some space.
There were a few questions that were sent in about learning a little bit more about what you do and your services. Where's the best place for them to go, and what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, Ilona?
Sure. Well, my website is under construction, but I do have an interim site up, so there's some basic information there. The address is www.careerbranches.com. That is, I'll spell it, CareerBranches.com. And when you're there, make sure to get my free report on how to really get a job in this economy, or in any economy, really. If you've been working with Kevin, you probably know this already, but when you sign up for that, you'll also receive my newsletter, my tips. They can also get in touch or connect with me on Facebook, rather. Or is this appropriate to give out here? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Whatever's the best way. Hey, if people want to get in touch with you,
oh, okay.
lay it all out there, my friend.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear from people. On Facebook, my name is Ilona.Vanderwoude, so it's basically my name separated by a period. So it's Ilona, I-L-O-N-A, Vanderwoude, V-A-N-D-E-R-W-O-U-D-E. On Twitter, I am Career Branches, no punctuation. And on LinkedIn, I am Ilona Vanderwoude, no punctuation. And also, I can be reached by email, excuse me, at Ilona, I-L-O-N-A, at careerbranches.com.
Okay, great. A few more questions. Is there a place
Sure.
we can get some MS Word format templates for some of the examples you've shared today?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Well, I think the question...
Templates for which examples?
For each of the resume examples, and I think that was part of what Ilona was talking about, is that there really are no templates per se, that each of these are very individualized. So,
they mean the resumes that I wrote?
Right.
For my clients?
Correct.
Oh, okay. No, see, they are no templates. Each one is indeed personalized, and they are copyrighted, so don't go copying them. They were prepared for my clients, and when I design a resume, it's everything comes together so that the format also supports the whole strategy, and that's really how you should be looking at this. And please, whatever you do, don't use the Microsoft Word template, because there is a template in Microsoft Word, and it is so overused and so hated by hiring people. And that's if you really want to just be like everyone else and, not be picked up. You just blend in, and it's a shame. So I know it's more work, but try to be a little creative without using crazy colors and all kinds of nutty things that make it hard on the eyes. But try to be creative, or if you're not good with Microsoft Word, ask someone to help you who is, or hire a professional. And they'll tailor it exactly to your needs and your background and your strategy.
A couple more questions. Do you have a preferred date format? For example, do you do month and date, or month and year, or just year in terms of outlining when somebody was at a company?
Right. Typically, I do include the months because I know hiring people like to see that. When you use years, it's often to masquerade something. Now, it depends a little bit on the situation. If there's, you can use just years to cover up gaps, and I guess that's why the person is asking this. Now, if you have a pretty solid background and you have one gap of, let's say, up to 6 months, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I mean, people do understand that it takes time to switch sometimes. If you have a very spotty background, and this is really a concern, you could do just years. I've done that with certain clients, but typically I do use months.
Okay. We have a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap up here. Um,
Sure.
can you talk a little bit more about how to quantify your brand? Maybe just kind of recap a couple of the things that you've talked about in terms of being able to quantify your brand.
Um, Also making sure that I understand the question. Quantifying your brand, do they mean, are you able to ask questions back for clarification?
Sure. And if you know, the individual who asked, can you talk a little bit about how to quantify your brand? If you want to add an additional question in there, a little bit more clarification, are you talking about
So what I'm
how
trying
to
to
come up
understand
with
here
a,
is,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I'm trying what I'm trying to get at is, does this person want to know how to uncover your brand, how to get to your brand, or how to get to that part of like the bottom line value of the brand?
Okay.
That's kind of like a one part of it.
Well, I'll give them a second to
Or
respond
or
to
are they
that.
talking about quantifying your achievements?
Okay. I'll give them a second to respond to that. We have one more question, and then we'll circle back to that one.
Okay,
Is it
we'll take a
okay to
stab at
go back
it.
17 years on the resume if that oldest position strongly supports your branding and has major accomplishments for, quote, a famous company?
Yes, and you know this 15-year guideline is really that. Sometimes it really depends on specifics. When I work with clients, I sometimes go back 20 years, sometimes only 10. It really, really depends, and it's too much to go into now, but this person brings up something very important, and that is if your really most marketable experience was way back then, you need to definitely use a hybrid format. Again, pull up those experiences and skills and achievements in these sections that you can use up front, because you never want to bury the gold, so to say. People are not going to read through your resume and all the way on the bottom on page 2, they find the relevancy. You know, they might have tossed you out already. So you definitely want to pull that up. You can use all kinds of quotes or mentions. You can even use just one sentence mentions in the summary. And this is, again, something I do want to stress. There is no one right way to do a summary. It's not just a few lines, you know, a few sentences. You can have a little bulleted list there. You can have a few short words there. You can have a sentence. You can do combinations. There's all kinds of creative ways of doing this, and you'd have to see what makes sense for you. But definitely, if it's going back 17 years, that's fine.
Okay.
But make sure to pull it up. Don't bury it in the bottom.
Well, we didn't get any more clarification on that other question, so that pretty much wraps it up. Do you want to take a quick second and just kind of give us a quick recap?
Yeah. Oh, do you want me to take a stab at that question?
Well, sure.
Or do you just want me to
Oh,
recap?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Actually, it just came in. Said you mentioned
Oh, great.
that after you define your brand, you need to quantify your achievements to support the brand statement. What are examples of specifics that can show this? So I think getting into talking about what is quantifying your brand.
Oh, okay, sure. Great. See, I'm glad we asked the question, because I would have answered it differently.
Okay.
Quantifying your achievements, first of all, tying it into the brand is making sure that when you look at all your accomplishments over your career, you pick and choose the ones that really support your brand, and your brand is also targeted to your current target, to your current focus or goal. So you want to make sure you're not just including any old achievements, but ones that are really relevant. It's about being relevant and supporting your brand. And it's actually something that will help you select your achievements when you have the brand first. So about quantifying them, it's about, for example, a salesperson, when he says increased sales every year. You're like, okay, great. Doesn't really tell me much. Could be a 1% increase. So you want to include as many quantifiable factors, such as dollar numbers, percentages, and preferably both. And you want to place it into a context, because when salespeople tell me, oh, I increased sales 25%, I want to know over what period of time. how did that compare to the goals? How does that compare to company average? Like, how does it really fit into the big picture? Like, is this great? Or, sometimes it's just not. Excuse me, sometimes it sounds great, but you have to know the whole context to understand it. And do we have like 2 more minutes? Because I'd love to say something else about this.
Absolutely.
Okay. So because we also received a question about, what do you do when you work in a field where it's hard to quantify the achievements? And I have a great solution for that. What you do is you look at how your company evaluates your performance. There's a reason you are on their payroll, and if you were not of value to the company, you wouldn't be there. So what metrics are in place for your function? Think of your annual performance review. What does your employer rate you on? That's a good starting point. Next, you need to realize that every position exists to solve a problem. So ask yourself, what do you solve? Are you making the company money? Are you saving them money? Are you saving time? Are you generating customer leads? Or are you saving someone else in the company time so he or she can focus on money generating tasks? There's always a bottom line result of your action, so you need to find yours. And one other little trick I also use with my clients when we try to uncover their achievements, and that is keep asking yourself, so what, when you come up with an achievement. So you say, I instituted some program in the ordering department, and then you ask yourself, so what? What did that do? Why is that great? Why does it matter? And you have another answer, and you ask again, so what? And you do this several times, and what this does is it will keep you peeling away until you reach the core of what you contribute and why it matters. So that's a little tip right there.
Okay, well that's great. Do you want to do any quick recap before we wrap up here?
Sure. So what I'd like you to take away from this overview today is that there's much more common sense to resume writing than one would think. Just put yourself in the hiring person's shoes, and anything you can do to make that person's job easier is going to get you closer to an interview. So remember, employers and recruiters want to be able to quickly see who you are, what you do, and how you do this differently from your peers. Tie this in with a bottom line value, and you're on your way to a winning resume. So let me also recap the 3 resume must-haves. 1, keep it focused. 2, brand it. And 3, support your brand with quantifiable achievements and context. And number 4, because I gave an extra one, keep your entire resume relevant to your target. Don't include every little thing you ever did.
Ilona, again, thank you very much. This has been great. I mean, not only has this been
My
information.
pleasure.
Well, ours actually. I mean, this has been information-packed. Not only with some how-to information I know everybody can be able to take away and implement immediately, which is what this mastermind series is all about. But I truly appreciate you taking your time to share your wisdom and knowledge with everybody in this group today.
Oh, definitely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And, good luck to everyone. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Well, hey, I'm glad everybody was able to join in on the call today. We ran a little bit over an hour, but more is better. We got to tackle a lot of great questions. And again, I'd like to thank everybody for being on here. And this is Kevin Kermis signing off for the Career Mastermind program.